Grab a pen and a piece of paper because you are not going to want to miss this episode. There is a lot of really great nuggets and great tips that you're going to walk away from. So let's get started. I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. Hello, Foxy listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I am really excited for this guest, and I know you guys are going to be too. This is going to be one episode I think you're going to listen to a couple of times because it's going to be just jam-packed. So let's jump right into it. Anjani, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
It's my absolute pleasure. I'm so excited to be here.
So first, before we jump into all of the goodies, I want to talk a little bit about your background because it's so interesting to me that you came from a corporate lawyer background. So can you give the listeners a little bit more on how you started there and then what made you want to switch?
Sure. I had a very prestigious 16-year legal career as a corporate lawyer, so corporate M&A. And I remember I got into that because I failed my my high school grades to get to be a doctor. So I thought, legal, that's the next best thing. You know, I can do that. That'll make me a success in the world. And I remember watching The Cosby Show, and his wife was a corporate mergers and acquisitions lawyer, and it sounded really sexy and, you know, really like successful. And I came from a very small mining town in Yorkshire in England. And I was the first in my family to go to university, first to get a degree, first to get a white collar job. So I thought, yep, I made it. And I literally drove my way to the top, had a very successful career, worked in the top law firms in the UK and Australia. And on the outside looking in, I had it all going for me. I had the money, the status, you know, the beach pad, I had it all, business class travel around the world. But I was miserable and I was empty on the inside. There was no fulfillment for me. And I remember I used to walk into these, you know, palatial offices in the city and think to myself, I have to check my soul in at the door here. And for me, it was, I never felt good enough in that space. I always felt like someone would tap me on the shoulder and tell me, oh, we made a mistake. We don't know how you got through here, but you need to leave, basically. And I lived with that constantly during my career. And I was very anxious. I had lots of panic attacks. I lost a lot of weight. I had chronic irritable bowel. So physically, mentally, and emotionally, I was exhausted. And I basically burnt out. And so I took myself to India to eat, pray, love myself, back to wellness. I'd read the book. I loved the book, and a retreat had come up and I thought, I'm going to go. And I never looked back since then. You know, it just opened up so many doors, so many gateways. I had so many realizations about who I really am and why I'm really here, my purpose, my health basically turned around and got, you know, I totally improved. And so then it was a journey, you know, of discovering who I am and why I'm here, and to what I do now, which is running my own business.
And this is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, because I think there's so many people out there. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs come from corporate life because just that they end up burning out, or they realize it's not for him or not for them. I'm the same way. I sort of worked in the government and hated it every day. And I too remember that definitive moment where, I was sitting at my desk and I kind of watched it. It was like everybody took a break exactly at the same time. And I watched everybody herd out and I thought, oh my God, I can't do this for another 40 years. Like this is excruciating. But in the midst of that, even before dealing with that or even going into my own business, I dealt with a lot of self-sabotage. And you had talked about that in your story of, do I actually belong here? And you're kind of waiting for the foot to drop. So can we talk a little bit about some of your tips on letting go of that self-sabotage?
Yes. Interestingly, studies have shown that women are 27% more likely to self-sabotage, to not trust themselves, to not back themselves, and to set a much higher bar for themselves compared with their male counterparts. So this happens in industry, in business, whether you're running your own business or in a corporate role. This is what goes on for women, and it's the silent killer. This is really what's killing women's progression in business, in the corporate world. It's this self-sabotage, and it comes in many forms. And I talk about the 8 inner saboteurs. So to mention a few, we've got the perfectionist, and I had this big time. I've got to work 10 hours on this thing to make it perfect before I can let it out the door, especially in my business. And it would really stop me from getting things done. So I never put myself forward. I was never good enough to be speaking. I was never good enough to write my book. I was never good enough to put that program out there. And it literally stopped me in my tracks. People pleasing is another big one I come across with my clients. Making sure everyone else is okay to my own detriment, making sure I please everyone. And if I perceive someone isn't liking me, then I have to do everything in my power to make sure that they do like me so that I feel okay. So if they're not okay, I'm not okay. There's a lot of victimness as well, victim consciousness. And so what we have to do is really start to identify which of these saboteurs are running the show. Like I said, it's a silent killer. It's not something we're conscious of. If we were conscious of it, obviously we would stop it. And we have to stop identifying ourselves with our saboteur tendencies. So they are outside of us. If we can see it outside of us as something, it's a learned behavior. It's not who I am. And we can stop saying, I am a perfectionist. And often we, take pride in it. If we can stop that and let that go and say, well, that's a learned behavior. Perfectionism, a learned behavior. And when I let that go, when I see that that doesn't identify who I am, it's not who I am, then I can start to achieve way more things in my business, in my job, in my vocation.
And I think there's a lot of people, especially women out there who, like you said, who do that, who do put those titles on them because, I think we're still in the time where being really busy is almost a badge of honor for a lot of people.
Yeah, you hit on a great point. I love that, a badge of honor. And it's all very masculine driven leadership when we say, I've got my, so many of my clients, mostly women, I've got my to-do list, I've got my goals, I've got to kick it. I was listening to, and I won't name a name, a very well-known speaker here in Australia, and he ran this live, and he got on there, he was sweating, he was aggressive, he was swearing, and these are our role models, and these badges of honor of I'm really busy, I've done my to-do list. This is what's driving the consciousness of business, and it's got to change. And this is not natural for women, especially in business. It's not where we naturally sit. Where we naturally sit is more cyclical, it's more intuitive, it's more natural, it's more collaborative. It's got a way better moral compass than this. So we have to start to have different role models, get new role models of empowered people who are empowered from the inside out, which means they're not trying to prove anything. They're not human doings. They realize they're human beings, and it's not, it's a blind spot, and we have to help people understand. And it's time women and business people understood that these badges of honor are the very things that are stopping us having the kind of success that we're really looking for.
And that's true, because I think, if people look back, and I always think it's funny because, I mean, I was there. I remember putting in all of the weeks and I was always busy and it was rare. I sort of took a holiday and I did. I was like, look how successful I am. And I did. I had a really successful business that I hated and resented. And it was a very, very bad relationship, really, is what it was. And now I take more pride when I'm like, oh, I only worked 3 days this week. Like that's what I want to see, more normalized, because I didn't start a business because I wanted to, work the same crazy hours that I was doing before. I wanted to have that freedom, but somewhere along the way, do you find that a lot of people either forget that or figure that that's just not realistic?
It's definitely, we believe it's not realistic. And this is the rhetoric. This is a story that society tells us. I did the same thing. I came out of my corporate job. I started my own business and I just replicated that same way of working. Why? Because it's ingrained in us. We're trained, we're brainwashed, we're in I call it the cult. It's the culture of what's normal in society, what's conventional. And we have to just take a step back and ask ourselves, is that working for me? Does that work for me? Because we can create a very successful business doing way less hours. And we have to do it in a way that's coming from a sense of self-assuredness and self-directed. When I know I'm a good person, when I know my services or what I'm offering is good and valuable, then people will see that and I will attract it to me. So there's two different ways of working. One, hard work and effort. 22-hour days for months on end. That's what I did. It gives you burnout. You're never fulfilled. It's never going to be sustainable. You will end up hating your business. I did the same. The second way of working is being attractive and magnetic to what you want by becoming what you're offering and having a very healthy, you talked about relationships, having a very healthy relationship with your business, finding what you love and doing that all of the time in your business. It makes you magnetic because people buy your relationship to the thing you're offering. So if you're overwhelmed, angry, anxious, frustrated, that's what you're offering in your business. And then you have to work really hard to make people buy stuff from you. Whereas if you have a healthy relationship and you love your business, people will find you. They will be attracted to you. You will magnetize them to you. It's a much easier way. And then, you can work 3 days a week and be even more successful than you ever would have imagined.
And I think, do you find that there's a lot of people too that struggle because they go, well, I'm putting that out there, but just putting it out there isn't enough. Saying the right words, I mean, and stuff. Sorry.
Yes, it's a great question because it's what vibe are you putting out? It's as important to understand how you're putting out and what you're putting out as the content. So the content's 50% of the story. Okay, get the right words. Yes, do your branding and all of that. But the energy with which, the vibe in which you send out, the emotions that you're experiencing, the thoughts that you're having while you're doing your business also get transmitted into your business and out through your services, out through your programs. That's what people feel. And so that's what people also take when they're on your website, seeing your socials. That's what people receive too. So that's the other, and it's more than 50% actually, it's about 85%. And so we have to understand that there's the subtle energy of the business as well as the physical activities and strategy. The two have to be merged together, and we have to be aware of both of these things.
So let's talk about, you talk a lot about how life and business is an inside job. And we kind of were talking about this, with self-sabotage, but I want to go a little bit deeper into that, if you don't mind.
Yes, I could talk forever, so I'm just going to give you
That's
the
okay.
abridged version. What I mean by this is that we can either live a life getting our needs met from people and things outside of us. So in other words, I feel good about myself when someone else outside of me is telling me you did a good job. I can feel good about myself when my business is earning $2 million, $3 million. Then I feel good about myself. I can feel good about myself if my business is earning money, I've got the house, I've got material possessions. So that's living an externalized or outsourced life. The problem with that is we are then reliant upon those things outside of us for our sense of self, for our, for our well-being. And we have to then work really hard to make sure that those people and those, the money and all of that stays there. And it's a lot of extra bandwidth that we have to use in addition to running our business. So there's all of this that goes on subtly that we're not even conscious of, as well as having to run our business. And it chews up a lot of our bandwidth unconsciously. The other way of being in the world, working, putting a business out there, is to be insourced, to look inside of you and look at, how do I regulate my emotions? How do I regulate my thoughts? How do I regulate my energy? And when we're becoming more self-regulated, then we're mastering what I call the business of self. And then we can operate at a very high potential, and it becomes limitless because I can self-regulate. And so I basically can satisfy my needs. I can satisfy myself. I can check myself when my brain goes, that's not good enough, and say, hey, I'm not listening to you, voice. Thank you so much. But that's not true. And we can override those negative thoughts. We can override our negative emotions. We can regulate ourselves. And then we're happy on the inside, we're fulfilled on the inside. And from that place, when we're running a business, oof, it's a whole different story.
Yeah, because I think people, I think it's such a common thing, especially when you were talking about the materialistic view, is that people look at that and go, that's tied to my success. If I have the big house and the cars and the boats and the country homes and all of that other stuff, then other people will find me successful. Because again, it goes back to that societal view that we've allowed to imprint on us. If people see this, then they'll assume that I'm successful. And, my listeners would know that, I started out in accounting, and I can tell you that the majority of the people who have that outside look of life usually are struggling. And it's not a very realistic picture. And, I never forget the day that there was a gentleman, and I went to do a home visit, which I usually don't do. And it was this like rundown, it looked like a rundown home. Like it was kind of taken care of, but I mean, it wasn't anything to write home about. And inside, in the living room, he had a TV that was on like those old TV trays, and two like lawn chairs. And I remember sitting going, why does this guy want to hire my firm? This doesn't make any sense to me. And he was stinking rich. And I learned so much from him, because he said, I think kind of like along the same lines of what you're saying, is he goes, it doesn't matter what I have on the outside. That's not what makes me happy. What makes me happy is the relationships that I've created. And I don't care what other people think. It's none of my business. And that's always been a huge lesson for me, that he says, what other people think of you, none of your business, doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's a difficult thing to get. It's a difficult place to get to if we're outsourced. We
Yeah.
have to bring it home. We have to come home and we have to ask ourselves, what am I thinking in the day that's tripping myself up? What are my limiting thoughts? What are my emotions doing? Am I loving myself? Am I appreciating myself? Am I respecting myself? Or typically, I had a client last week and she was saying to me, I've got all these goals. I want to do all of these things, but I hate my business. The clients aren't coming. I don't believe in myself. And I'm like, well, there's the problem right there. It's not everything that you're doing in the day. It's not all, you don't have to work harder. You actually have to work less. You have to tend to that relationship with yourself and start to trust that you are offering an amazing product and what you do is genuinely good, and knowing your worth and then sharing that with your clients. And so working on those inner relationships with ourselves, it's so important. And then just so that your listeners know, that doesn't mean be poor, because that's where we go to. Our brain goes, oh, well, if I do that, then I'm going to be poor. And that
Right.
means
If I work less, it means less money. Yeah.
it means less. No, here's the dichotomy of that. When we become in-sourced, when we're happy on the inside, when we're satisfied on the inside, when we love and accept and appreciate ourselves, we naturally attract, we become massively attractive and magnetic to everything that we want. So we don't have to work hard for it. It just comes to us. And, I had a client this week. Every week this happens with my clients. When they start shifting this relationship inside, she said to me, oh my God, you never guess what happens. This is what they usually say. You'll never guess what happens. And I'll say, yes, I will. Because this is what starts happening. We start getting in the flow state and we start aligning with everything that we've ever asked for starts to flow to us, because we're more receptive, we're more open, because we're just more joyful and more happy. And that's what it takes. It takes us to sit back, to let go, to trust ourselves, and then we can just simply align with what we're wanting. It just flows into my clients. They never believe it. I just got asked to send a proposal for this massive 3-day retreat, and she just started a business. She didn't even get a website up. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I've never done a proposal, blah, blah, blah. And then she was worried, how much do I charge? And so we worked on her self-value rather than how much she was charging for the proposal. Because I said, it doesn't matter what you're charging in the proposal. You have to be aligned with the value that you give. And then you can say 5 million, 2 million, $2,002, whatever you say, they will agree with you because you're in alignment with it. You're valuing what you're offering.
I love that, because I think, I want people to go back and to listen to that again, because I think so often people start the wrong way. They start with the price and then they go, okay, how am I now going to justify this to somebody else?
That's it. And it's the wrong way around. And it's not our fault, because that's how we're not taught this at school. We're not taught this in business school. No coach, or I don't know any coach who's teaching this, it doesn't get taught in our institutions, for example. And so it's a very inside out way of working. And I call it internal dynamics. We have to start with the internal self-value, self-respect first. That's the first step. When we've got that going, when we've got momentum with that, then what we put out there, we're fully accepting of it. We trust it. We are, and the energy that we put out with it matches us. And people then will go, okay. It just is really simple. There's not that hard work and effort involved at all. We don't have to justify it. It's okay for those people who've made their millions, those Tony Robbins, they've made their millions. They've taken years and years of hard work and effort to get there. But when you're starting out in your business, or when you're running a small to medium business, you're not necessarily earning that kind of money. And it's important that we value ourselves, so that when we are putting our work out there, people do accept us, and we don't have to convince people or use sleazy sales tactics. They just feel who we are and they trust us. It's creating that lovely relationship.
And do you find too that people, because often you hear people like, what do you think it would take to, to make you happy, to make you feel successful? And of course, a lot of people go to, dollar value in their head, if I make millions or whatever. And do you find as well that sometimes people have to take a step back and really assess what would actually make me happy? Because I hear that all the time. People go, I want to make, high 6 and 7 figures. And I'm like, did you think about how much work goes into that?
Yeah, it's again what our society tells us will make us happy. If you make 6 figures, if you 10 times your business, then you'll be happy. So if you hear this, if you hear yourself saying this, here's my goals. I want blah, 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 blah. I want a car. I want a house. I want a family. I want kids. I want money, blah, blah. That means that you've externalized your real desire. What is the real desire? So I ask my clients, okay, do you want to earn 10 million, 6 million? Why? Oh, because then blah, 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 I'll be happy. So I say, get happy first, then you don't have to achieve that. Then you've reached your destination. And then from a happy place, what you get to create is miraculous. Miraculous. It's making the seemingly impossible possible when you start from a happy place. So then I'll get my clients to work with intentions rather than goals. And intentions are, what is it that I feel? What is it that I want to feel and experience from having the goal, having reached the goal? I want to feel happy. I want to feel acknowledged. I want to feel appreciated. These are the real goals or intentions that people are after. Okay, let's work on that. Let's achieve that. And then run your business from that feeling place. It creates amazing results. Then I had a client this week saying when she came to me, she didn't trust herself, she didn't appreciate herself, she didn't appreciate her business, and she's now first month of 7 figures. She sold her house, she bought a new house, she met a partner, and she basically let go of an addiction that she was having to alcohol to basically run her life. So she got clean and sober. So all of these happened in 3 short months because we worked on the inside of her. All of those things, her being acknowledged, acknowledging yourself, being respected, respect yourself. And then she started to attract those things outside of her, because really our outside life is simply a reflection of our internal environment. And I'll say that again because it's so important. If we can understand this and it drops in as a realization, it's very powerful. Everything outside of us is a reflection of our internal environment. Everything. Change the inside, the outside naturally changes. It's effortless.
And I love that you use that example, because I think sometimes, people will use the excuse of, because we think, sometimes it's decades we've sort of been living this life or trying to build this life that we're at right now. So we automatically, do you find a lot of people automatically go to, well, I don't have the time. Like, where am I going to fit this in to, change my thought process and get rid of all of these negative thoughts like that? I think of like meditation. People are like, I don't have the time. Like, where am I going to find the time? What do you say when you hear stuff like that?
You're right. You don't have the time to sit for an hour meditating when you're using all your bandwidth to please other people and chase things that aren't going to get you the success you want. So you can use that strategy. You can keep going, especially, decades you've been doing it, but how's that working for you? How's it working for you? And then I also want to say, I never give the people I work with anything like, okay, go and meditate for an hour. No, that's not going to be practical. So the way I work is practical wisdom. So we have to bring these Eastern technologies and philosophies into a modern world. We're busy, we're householders, we're not monks, we're not nuns sitting in a monastery. We're living a very busy life. So The only thing we have to change is our awareness. Become more observant. Observe what you're thinking. Observe how you're feeling so that you get greater awareness. I call it the C's strategy. Self-inquiry brings greater self-awareness, and then we're more likely to self-support, self-correct. We can go, oh, I've noticed me saying, I don't have enough money. You know, my clients will say repeatedly when they're talking, when they're sharing their story, yeah, my business is, you know, it's not the success, it's not making money, I don't have the clients coming in. They're very powerful words that they're saying that they will then create for tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. So just observing what's coming out of your mouth. Is it what you're really wanting or not? And then change, flip the script. I do have lots of clients. I'm open to more money. Money flows to me every day in every way, and start speaking that as if, act as if. Don't be so fixed in your current reality. You've already created it, done. You can't change it, but you can change tomorrow. You can create a new one. So it's really important that we are aware of what we're saying and what we're thinking and how we're feeling. That doesn't take any more time. We just have to watch ourselves.
And I think that's a good one for people to start with, is that awareness piece, because so often, we've thought this way for so long, so it almost becomes an unconscious thought. But as soon as we take a moment to really listen, then we can go, well, that's not right, right? Like, would I say that to somebody else? Why do I say that to myself?
Exactly. And a really simple way I love to give this to people is when they're first starting out on this different way of being and doing life, is take a piece of paper and play bingo with yourself and write down. You set an alarm for every hour, and just when the alarm goes off, just take a moment, get your piece of paper and write down what you were thinking right before the buzzer went off. And often you'll find you'll have a lot of realizations about, wow, what I'm thinking is really not what I'm wanting to put out there in the world. It's not what I would want my client to hear. It's not what I would want to say out loud to anyone. Am I, what I'm saying, what I'm wanting, or is it talking about what I've got right now? Because if I talk about what I've got right now, I'm going to keep creating that for tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. So just by changing that, you'll get massive changes in what flows to you, what flows into your life. It's, like I say, it's quite miraculous.
So if people are out there and they are, because I'm sure there is so many people in our audience that are like, I need more. I need more. Tell them where they can go to find you and what sort of things they're going to discover when they get there.
Sure, you can find me on the website. It's my name, anjaniamriit.com. And on the website, there's lots of free downloads. I've got a YouTube channel on all the socials, and I offer free programs, a free discovery call with me if you're interested. So there's lots of ways you can start to access the work that I do. If you are interested in working one-on-one with me, then I do take private mentoring clients. I also offer group programs, and I've got one running. I launch it, I open the doors usually once a quarter to help women step into their power, reach their potential, and really find that success from the inside out and have that come out in their life. And we do the inside and the outside work with that. And I also run retreats. So now that COVID's kind of dying down, I offer profound purpose retreats. There's lots of ways in which you can start to work with me, get in touch with me. You can always just message me. I'm around, hopefully, for the next 3 decades or so. We'll see. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, not only your story with us, but I think there's a lot of tips in the conversation that we had for people to even just start to realize, are they talking bad about themselves? And I love, especially the technique you used of setting the alarm and writing it down, because I think sometimes we're unaware of how negative we are being, throughout the day, and just trying one little change and seeing how that ripple effect, sort of happens.
Yeah, exactly. And make it a small change. So we can't go from I don't have enough money. There's no clients coming into, I have so much money and lots of clients floating, because it's too big a leap for us. So just the next tiniest, smallest little thing that you can say, you can just say to yourself, thank you very much, mind, but bring me a better thinking thought. And just change it slightly, 1% or 2%, you're already making massive differences in your life.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We'll make sure that we link to everywhere that you can find Anjani and learn more about her YouTube channel, all of that stuff, so you can get obsessed with her, as well as find the events that are coming up if you're interested in working on this more. Thank you so much again to Anjani for coming on the show and just being such a wealth of information. I hope you got as much out of this episode as I did interviewing her. So don't forget to head over to our website to learn more about Anjani, how you can get a hold of her, and all of the stuff that she has coming up. And make sure that you head to our Facebook page so that you don't miss the registration for our Stop Trading Minutes for Money Masterclass. It is only going to be at the pre-sale price of $27 for a few more weeks, so don't miss out. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope to see you all there. So no matter what it is that you're doing today, whether you're listening to another episode, whether you're getting ready to change the world, make sure that you take time to have fun. Because as I always say, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?